Good morning, folks. I see Mr. Milligan's in the chat this morning. Good morning, Mr. Milligan. There's been some interesting stats released today from government. Quite confusing, actually. But we'll get into that this afternoon. We'll just get Facebook on board. Yes, so some interesting statistics released this morning from the Office of National Statistics. So we'll get into that this afternoon, folks. David and I. That's Facebook on board. So we'll just give him a chance to get in, see who's in. Hi Ange, hi Lorna, hi Stephen, hi Jeanette, Woodpet, Akies, Alistair. And of course Melanie, first one in this morning from Facebook. Good morning, Melanie. How are you today, my dear? Right, we have a wee bit for people to get on board. Morning, Kay. Now, you like the t-shirt? Well, that was Kaz and Lynn. I've got one there for David and I've just not got around to taking it out here. We're posting. I keep forgetting. But that was Karen and Lynn. And I see Kaz has buggered off somewhere nice again. I hope you're tuned in this morning for wherever it is you're, Kaz. No excuse. This goes out globally. Right, where are we? Now we're climbing nicely. So let's get this underway. It's Indy Truck Davy out the truck and at home in his office in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where it is a beautiful morning, sunny, 14 degrees, predicted highs of 18 to 19 degrees here in North Lanarkshire. Today, the mother and toddler group is out at the community centre. They've got the kids in the park, very busy. And it's, they say, beautiful. Now, they say highs expected to be 18 degrees. Pollen count is low. Main allergen is grass. Now, that's what it's like here in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. If you want to know what it looks like, how the weather is where you are, look at your rain, bloody windy. All right. Anyway, first up this morning, we've got the Herald. We'll put it up. The Herald tells us that universities face tax bill of 85 million on foreign students. And this is to do with Starmer's new crackdown on immigration. And apparently, in amongst the student visa stuff, there is a tax on foreign student fees, which will be paid by the universities to HMRC. So, when we talk about intellectual decline, Starmer's hell-bent in wrecking the higher education system. Now, intellectual decline has been underway in England for quite a while because of tuition fees in their universities. But these additional costs will scare off foreign students for coming here to do post-grad or even to do their first foray into the higher education sector. And that will see universities go into decline and out of business. Some of them are already in trouble. As we know, Dundee is right in it. Edinburgh's up to his neck in debt as well. Right. Next up, we have the other unionist shill rag in Scotland, the Scotsman. We'll put it up and see what it's got for us today, shall we? Assisted dying bill is not fit for purpose, says GP's body. And that was bound to be. You know, but what is it the GPs want? Well, they want the scheme to be an opt-in scheme for medical professionals. And to be fair, I think that's about right. But as to the assisted dying bill not being fit for purpose, says GP's body, they're no the only ones. I can assure you that they are not the only ones. Take that down. Apparently, we're no competent enough to write legislation. But we'll get a wee bit into that in a minute. Next up's the Daily Fail. We'll put the Daily Fail up and see what this rancid rag's got for us today. The Scottish Daily Fail. It tells us, is right to die bill doomed? Deeply flawed, ill-conceived plan condemned by legal experts amid warnings of serious, unfixable risk and court challenges. Unfixable. Any legislation that's flawed is fixable. You do it through amendments. But people who are against this bill will take it to court. They will. Religious organisations, a lot. This one will end up in court. And ultimately, of course, I don't remember this furore when the English and Welsh bill passed its first stage in the English Parliament. Because let's get it straight, it is the English Parliament. I don't remember this sort of furore. But of course, the colony has to be kept in its place. So we're no competent enough, or to use Labour terms, genetically evolved enough to write a competent piece of legislation. Even though the legal system's been around for 800 fucking years, apparently we're too fucking thick to write a competent piece of legislation. Didn't know the challenges were coming to this. Forewarned, forearmed. But the Scottish Government's record in the Supreme Court's no great. Is this bill doomed? Probably. Unless Westminster passes a similar bill first. Right, next up we have the Rancid, I think, and I don't put the Rancid up. Yep. The Rancid goes on, a sex crime story. Pervert secretly filmed 12-year-old. Vile teacher jailed for upskirting girl pupils. Sir caught taking indecent photos in class. Belongs in fucking jail. Not much to add to that. Right, I think it's the Times that's up next. Yep. Come on, share. Right. The Times. Let's get an interesting headline. Well, it goes with Starmer first. And it tells us that Starmer's in Albania meeting the Albanian leader for shared migration solution. In other words, Starmer wants to send back more Albanians to Albania. But the main headline's the interesting one for me, and that is SNP shift goalposts over child poverty cash. Now, what's being claimed is that the child uplift here in Scotland is only raising 40,000 children out of poverty. Will the cost of living crisis change the benefit system? That's probably right. But the 100,000 figure doesn't come for just a child uplift cash that they get at £26 or £27.50 a week per child for families that qualify. You've got to take into consideration things like free school meals, school uniform grant, extended early learning, and roll them all in. And that's where you get the 100,000 shielded from poverty figure. It's not a single metric. It's a measure. It's a cap. It's a whole policy made up of many parts, and it's the many parts that lift and shield these children from poverty. It's not just the payment. The payment was going to be worth less and less in cash value as the cost of living crisis rockets. And it is still going up, folks. Maybe not as fast as it was, but it's still going up. So, the Tories claiming that the child uplift cash isn't lifting as many children out of poverty as the SNP claim. They say it's only 40,000. It probably is only 40,000 on that single one metric. But when you add in the other measures, as I say, free school meals, uniform grant, extended early learning so that parents can get to work, these are, as a package, the measures are shielding or keeping 100,000 kids out of poverty. But it's interesting how they like to spin a lot of pish, isn't it? Take one metric out of your policy package and spin it as a bad story. At least we're doing something to lift children out of poverty. We're being criticised for something that the fucking opposition parties are not doing anywhere else on these islands. At least we're trying to shield children from poverty. We're trying to lift people out of poverty. That's not the case next door. Fucking no real. Interesting headline, that one. Say it's a policy package that's lifting people out of poverty, not a single element of that policy package. This is one of the problems with politics and policy. People don't seem to understand that generally there's a package of policies or a package of measures going through a policy programme. Unbelievable. But, it's the Tories, and it's an SNP bad story, allegedly. But it's not a bad story at all. At least we're fucking lifting people out of poverty. Murder could be said for the Imperial Masters next fucking door, who, since coming to power, have actually shoved 500,000 more children into fucking poverty. Some of them into destitution. And their impact assessments told them they were going to be doing it. And they did it fucking anyway. That's your Imperial Masters for you unionists. So, bad story because we're lifting people out of fucking poverty rather than driving them into poverty. But every time we make a bit of progress, the fucking idiots next door do something to impede it. Next up, that was the Times. Next up, we've got the Scum. I don't put the Scum up. The Scum has Megxit, Piers Montecito invite. So Megxit Piers Montecito invite Harry and Meghan to host Brooklyn and Nick to help in family feud. Brexit. I have no real idea what that's all about. And to be fair, I really don't give a fuck. Harry and Meghan and Brooklyn and Nick. See, we work this one out. Harry and Meghan, that's the spare and his wife. Brooklyn, I've heard that before. And Beck's it. Brooklyn Beckham, and she fell out with his dad, something like that, isn't there? There you go. That was fucking boring. Next up we have the National. We'll put it up. But this comes a good example of intellectual decline. Right, what's the National vote for us today? Not welcome. Glasgow Pride asks all political parties to stay away. Hey, winner. These culture wars. So the LGBT community is getting it. And the culture wars. Main headline. UK government lawyers deny Gaza genocide. Angering comments as High Court defence over British supply of Israeli fighter jet components appears to contradict what ministers have been telling the Commons. Now, citizens groups have got the UK government in the High Court at the moment. It'll go all the way to Supreme Court. Who are supplying arms to Israel in contravention of their international obligations. But they say in the Commons they're not denying it's a genocide. But in order to keep supplying weapons, the lawyers are arguing in the High Court it's no genocide. That's a fucking genocide. And what does he really think about immigration? Sarwar, what does he really think about immigration? He doesn't. He doesn't think about immigration. To quote Joanne Lamond, Scottish Labour are not genetically evolved enough to make their own decisions or to have independent thought. They rely on their imperial master next door to do their thinking for them. That's why they've never the Scottish Pacific manifesto or fuck all. They've never put forward budget alternatives in forward because they're not capable of thinking for themselves. So what does Sarwar really think about immigration? He doesn't. He's not capable of independent thought. He's a fucking idiot. And he's a ambulance chasing. Why don't you stop being an MSP because you're shite at it, Sarwar? Stop being a politician. I'll be back to being a dentist. Maybe be some fucking help in the NHS. Spanner. But no, Sarwar hasn't got independent thought. He's a member of the fucking SLAB. Scottish Branch Office of Labour. What does Sarwar think about immigration? Not capable of thought. Okay. Right, next up's the Knuckle Draggers paper, The Express. What's it got for us today? We'll stick it up. Mobile phone classroom ban positive for learning. Well, you know, actually, the jury's out on that one. No enough data to be compiled as yet. But since a couple of schools in Edinburgh have pulled it, and Moray Council in up in the north east have banned mobile phones, that's what the story's about, in classrooms. Maybe we'll get enough data to decide whether making the little darlings put their mobile phones away during lessons is a good idea or no. Some schools allow them to use their phones to access the school's internet because the learning's on it. No all schools can give every kid a pad or a laptop to work on. But we're about to get the data. Now that this decisions been made, and there's two schools along there in Edinburgh having come to the same conclusion. We're about to get data on whether it's going to be positive for learning to make them put away their phones. Right, what do we get next? Next we have The Guardian. This one, I'm not quite sure what this is all about. Half the time, this paper. 1 minute it's left of centre, next minute it's right of centre, next minute it's right down the bloody middle. Right, The Guardian. Ministers accused over surge in meeting with US big tech firms. This will be them negotiating the tech tax, or the getting rid of tech tax as part of Donald Trump's so-called trade deal. And what's about it? Terms for reoffending cut to ease jails crisis. That's what happens. You don't build new fucking jails. That's what happens. You're jailing too many citizens. And world left guessing over Putin's Turkey visit. Is Putin going to turn up to talk to Zelensky? Right. Next up, we have the Telegraph, and it's back on trade. It's back on a culture wars. Right, the Telegraph. It's on the culture wars today. Pretty sick of the culture wars, actually. I really am. NHS offers treatment to trans toddlers. Now, apparently, under sevens can now be seen by gender specialists at a specialist gender clinics, apparently, because of changing guidance. It's interesting considering the way the trans community has been getting battered. And the byline. The byline is also on trans rights. NHS failed to keep public from watching trans tribunals. A tribunal. I guess that was that tribunal that was going in Fife. Very public. Trans doctor, I think it was, or a trans nurse. They didn't like working with each other, didn't like having to share the same space with each other. Went to a tribunal. It's the only thing I can think of on that one. But it's culture wars all the same. Keeping it up. Keeping up with culture wars. Now, next up, I believe, is the Eye. Let's get an interesting headline for us today, folks. We'll get it up. Interesting. It's no there. I'll just go and get it. Give me 2 seconds, folks. Because this one is a good one. It's an important headline, this one. Right, now we can get it up. See, this one's interesting. UK food and drink prices set to rise in both to Starmer's cost of living plan. Now, as I say, there's been some interesting stats coming out today on the UK economy and the unemployment figures. We'll talk about it later. But UK food and drink prices set to rise in blow to Starmer's cost of living plan. Well, normally these things are driven by inflation or problems in the global supply chain. There have been some problems in the global supply chain. But what do you think's behind it? Well, if they keep putting the food prices up here, they'll convince us that we need to open up to American markets to bring down food prices. That's what I think's going on here. But this just tells us that the cost of living crisis is not over by a long chalk. Not over by a long way. But, cheap American chicken and hormone injected beef to the rescue. That's the sort of thing that goes on. Next up, the Metro. It's a cracker. Let's stick it up. The Metro. After Holyrood backs assisting dying Bill, Bishop blasts state suicide service vote. I like the way the Bishop's termed this. And this is John Keenan, the Bishop of Paisley. And he's no chuffed with the progressive bill that's went into the Scottish Parliament. If you call assisted dying progressive, well, you wouldn't make like your dog suffer, would you? I'm on the fence on this one. I want to see the guidance. But to say, I like the way the Bishop has coined this state suicide service. But so the Bishop's been doing some bashing of the Parliament, but we knew the religious groups would. We did know that. We did know that the religious groups were all against this. Every single one of them. So, say this thing will end up in court. First person to come forward after this bill passes, if it passes, and asks for assistance to die, will be right in the court. Maybe be in the court before it gets that far. Right, what's the Star go for this morning? Well, the Star's got an entertainment story, but I haven't got a Scooby what it's about. Maybe some of you people won't. And to be fair, I didn't have any interest in going to find out. Anyway, the Star has Universal Studios row. Big Fat Gypsy Theme Park Battle. TV Paddy's Traveller War on roller coasters. I have absolutely no idea. The mind fucking boggles. Travellers going to war with roller coasters. What they using? Grinders. Hacksaws. Spanners. Going to war on roller coasters. I haven't got a Scooby what that's about, folks. Can't help you. But as I say, there's been some interesting stats come out this morning. David and I will talk about them this afternoon. Once they seem to contradict each other. But, way it goes. You've been lurking, you just can't keep away. I take it you're still in Manchester then, Stephen. Right, so that's the headlines of the day, folks. I mean, the most outrageous one, of course, is the claim that Scottish Child Uplift Disney help 100,000 people out of poverty. No, it doesn't. It's the policy package. The uplift's only one element of it, and as you can see, the cost of living crisis is still deepening. It is still deepening. Thank you, Stephen. Don't go sending all your spending money to us. You're no better get home from Manchester. Right. As I say, that's it for the day. That's the headlines for the day. As I say, the most outrageous one is the Tories claim that the child uplift only helps 40,000 people, or only prevents 40,000 people dropping into poverty. As I say, it's a policy package that gives you the total figure, not a single element of the policy package. You guys have a nice day. We'll see you this afternoon, 4 o'clock, with the other David. I've got a couple of things I need to get done this morning, then I'll go on to writing. Catch you later. Bye for now. See you all tomorrow morning, the ones that won't make it this afternoon. The ones that are going to show up this afternoon, See you then.